When you think of some of the worst sporting teams of all time, your mind might drift off to the 2016 76ers, the this past year with the Chicago White Sox, or even the Cleveland Browns as a franchise as a whole. But your mind might not drift off to any college team yet. Possibly one of the worst sporting teams of all time came in college football, and that team is Prairie View A&M. They are an HBCU that in the early 50s, 60s, won around five whole HBCU national championships with 8 conference championships. But by the late 1980s to early 1990s, their program was in the gutter, and by that point, they lost up to 80 games in a row, spanning 9 seasons. So how did they do that? But before I get into that, I chose this topic because I think we can all relate to losing. Maybe not for this long, but we've all either been a fan of a losing team or just on the losing team or on the losing end of an argument, whatever. Uh, and so I could not imagine losing at something that I love for 9 years in a row, and I don't know how this happened. However, it started. I'm not going to go into how they were great and everything because it would take up the entire speech pretty much. But let's just say by the late 1980s, the program was in the gutter. They made some bad coaching hires. They weren't able to recruit as well anymore, and so they didn't really win as much. But the worst coaching decision that they ever made was hiring a guy by the name of excuse me, Henry Catchings. I don't know why I couldn't pronounce that. Anyways, he was their 16th head coach, and he was hired back in 1988 as a offensive coordinator, and then they promoted him in 1989. And by 1989, uh, their entire team was horrible, and it was mostly because of him. Catchings would run practices for 6 hours. He would take away his players' books so they couldn't study, so they could only focus on football. And so all these guys were tired of football. Their bodies literally could not play it anymore because they're practicing for 6 hours a day, which is extremely inhumane. And then their grades are falling off a cliff. The New York Times said that by the end of the 1989 season, 43 out of the 55 players had GPAs below 2.0, below a 2.0, which is insane for a collegiate roster at the Division One level. Mind you, it's a HBCU, so they're not playing Alabama, but still, they're a Division One school. Um, so, anyways, he would also withhold their financial aid until their performance got better. And so by that point, all the players hated him and they all quit. It didn't matter though because they lost every single game that year, and everyone was pissed off at him. Not only that, but Catchings also would be later convicted of fraud for stealing $100,000 of the athletic department money, practically bankrupting them at the time, and they were only able to keep women's track and field out. Every other program in the entire school for athletic shut down because of this guy. So they try to return back into 1991, but it's because they have no money, they can't offer any scholarships. So they literally get like nobodies to play for them, and they lose every single game. Fast forward all the way up to 1998, they are still horrible, but by this point they at least have 8 scholarship players. So they can go after a few decent people, but even the top people who would go to a HBCU still wouldn't want to go there because they don't win games. So no one wants to go there. So it's really just the bottom of the barrel prospects that they can get. They also fired Catchings after he's became a fraud and he stole $100,000 from them as well. However, since like I said, by 1998, they did win a game, and it was 14-12 against Langston. Ironically, the team that beat them the first time, that started the entire losing streak back in 1998. Uh, and after the game, after holding on to a close lead by 14-12, running back Kevin Bell said, "One isn't good enough for me. I don't want people to think it was a fluke." And then they proceeded to go 2-9 that year, which is just a great story and all. So in conclusion, Prairie View, while being one of the most dominant HBCU colleges and college football at one point in time had an insane fall off, an extreme fall off, uh, that pretty much tarnished their legacy as a college football like school. And even though they have recovered since, and they did win a conference championship back in 2009, they're still only really remembered for an 80 game losing streak, which is double, almost double to the second place team and their Division 3. So yeah,